Well, good morning, early morning. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. Well, it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday, and the regular crowd's tuning in. How are you all going? I hope you're doing really, really good today. So, I've got some updates for you, and I just need to you know, yeah. So, first of all, we've been following the Melissa Caddicks story as it's played out in the court. Now, yesterday there was in the court appearance, which was interesting. Hello, the Fox. So let's just have a look here. So it was in front of Justice Markovic. Okay, and it was adjourned because it was a case management hearing. So the last lot of stuff was in November 26, 2021, and there is a hearing set down for March 2022, the 4th of March, the 17th of March 2022, and then another case management hearing for the 3rd of May 2022. The thing is, at the moment, Melissa Caddicks' husband is trying to stop the sale of the property, and that is going to be sorted out in March for the hearings in March, and her parents are trying to stop the sale of their property in May 2022. Now, this is where it really gets interesting. Hello, Terry C. and the Fox. Welcome. This is where it starts to get really, really interesting because we know that Melissa Caddicks' parents gave her money. They sold their house, gave the money from the sale of the house to their daughter to put towards the deposit of the house they are currently living in. Well, the auditors have discovered that money that they gave her never actually went to the house. She spent it like she did with everybody else's money, and that the house is actually being purchased using fraudulent money. So the liquidators are arguing that they actually, although they thought they had a stake in the house, the money wasn't there. The money isn't there. Her husband is arguing that he has to work. He can't find he can't afford to live anywhere else. And he's raising her son. Yes. Just like the rest of society. I mean, he wants to keep the $1 million property. The liquidator is arguing that the properties need to be sold because all the victims require their money. So, as I said, this is all going to be played out over the house. Now, the husband also disputed the sale of the cars, and the cars were sold earlier this week. So we'll have a look at some of the newspaper articles reporting this, and then we'll look at the court documents that we can access. So, missing fraudster's husband fights to keep home. So, Anthony Coletti, the husband of the missing fraudster, has told a Sydney court he objects to the sale of the family home his wife bought for $6.2 million, secured by a deposit from money she stole from the victims of her Ponzi scheme. He also objected to the liquidators of his wife's assets having access to the Dover Heights property. Appearing in the federal court via an audio-visual link on Thursday, Mr. Coletti said he saw no purpose in court-appointed receivers having access to a home. The Fox, I agree, this is an absolute mess. And I guess this is why a judge needs to sort this out, because the judge needs to remove, I think it's the justice needs to remove themselves from all the, just look at and make sure the law is employed and remove the emotional factor out of it. I need all the money I can get, he told the court, adding he couldn't afford to take days off work to let them in the home as I'm trying to support a young child. But he's a teenager, he's not young. Miss Caddicks' teenage son from her first marriage is understood to be residing with Mr. Coletti. Bruce Gleason and David Searle from the insolvency firm Jones Partners have been appointed by the Federal Court Justice Bridget Markovic to identify and dispose of assets Miss Caddicks and her company, Melvita, acquired using more than $3 million that she stole from investors. So it's a she. Stephen Golich, SC, who's representing the receivers, told the court the home that Mr. Coletti objected to the sale of, but he objected to the sale of the home, but had failed to provide any evidence to support claim on the property. So the court had said he needed to prove that he had a stake in the property. So it's a $6.2 million house. Mr. Coletti also objected to Monday night's sale of the Audi R8 sports car, which fetched $295,000. But again, he failed to provide liquidators with any evidence that he had contributed to the purchase of the car by his wife for $390,000 in 2016. This is the problem that he's got, because he has to prove he's got a stake in these properties. So the court had previously heard that Mr. Coletti, a hairdresser, had only $1.95 in his bank account when his wife disappeared in November 2020. The previous day, the federal police executed search warrants at her home on behalf of the corporate regulator ASIC. So if he's got $1.95 in his bank account, then he cannot be contributing financially to the home, the mortgage, etc., etc., etc. So it would, I guess, on the face of it, it would seem that he has no stake in the property. Also objecting to the proposed sale of the Edgecliff penthouse their daughter bought using stolen funds are her parents, Barbara and Ted Grimley. The couple provide barristers Robert Newlands, SC, and John Anderson to challenge the receiver's claims. The Grimleys claim they agreed to a tenancy for life following the contribution of $1.1 million towards the property. Now, I think the parents have a better claim. Hello, Bella. I think the parents have a better argument than Mr. Coletti, because they actually sold their property and gave her $1.1 million on the assumption that it was going towards the mortgage. Now, she didn't put it towards the mortgage, but I think, hello, Laura, they've got a lot stronger claim. So, however, following the money, the receivers have found that Miss Caddicks spent her parents' money on her luxury lifestyle, which included spending millions on luxury holidays, designer clothes, and jewelry. So, as I said, they gave her $1.1 million thinking that it was going towards the property purchase of their house, but she didn't put it to that. Miss Caddicks' brother, Adam Grimley, also told the court on Thursday he intends to launch a claim over the Edgecliff property. He provided his sister with hundreds of thousands of dollars to help with the mortgage. The receivers maintain she spent the money on herself as well. Again, he has given money towards the property. Both his parents and her brother, both her parents and brother, can prove that they contributed financially to that property on the face of it, even though she spent the money on herself. However, the husband can't prove that. So if we're looking at what we can see that's been reported here, probably the parents could keep their home and they will sell his home. Over an 8-year period from October 2012, Miss Caddicks passed herself off as a financial advisor after her clients, mainly family and friends, invested money. She created fictitious ComSec portfolio statements, leading them to believe she had invested their shares. Mr. Gleason said previously that after reviewing thousands of pages of financial documents, he could not identify a single genuine document Miss Caddicks provided to her investors. Justice Markovich will deal with Mr. Coletti's objections to receivers having access to the family home on March the 4th, and she will deal with the claims on the two properties on May the 3rd. So that's the court dates. So let's go back to here. So the justice is going to deal with, and then she's going to deal with the properties here. So let's have a look at the orders here. So have you got any thoughts on all of this? I mean, it is a bit of a mess. This whole thing is a mess. The body's never been found. So here are the orders. So the court orders that leave be granted to Messrs. Gleason and Sierra in their capacity as joint and several receivers of the property, of the first defendant, receivers, to file and serve an amended interlocutory application. Paragraphs 1, 3, and 4A of the amended interlocutory application be listed for hearing before Justice Markovic on the 4th of March 2020 at 11 a.m. with an estimate of 1 hour. Receivers are justified in paying their remuneration and costs and expenses approved by the court in the sum of $188,000 from the receiver's trust account. So there's a trust account that's been set up. So here we go. This is to do with the Edgecliff property. Any claim Edward Gormley, Barbara Gormley, or Adam Gormley asserting an interest in the Edgecliff property is to be articulated on behalf of those parties in a concise statement with accordance with the Federal Court Practice Note CNC1 and is to be filed and served on the receivers by the 7th of April. The receivers are to file and serve a concise response by the 28th of April. If more than one of Edward Gormley, Barbara Gormley, and Adam Gormley serve a concise statement to receivers are to file a concise response for each of the concise statements. So the proceeding as far as claims to be listed for a case management hearing on the 3rd of May. If no claim is articulated by the 7th of April, the receivers granted leave to approach the court to seek directions regarding the sale of the property. So then we've got the Dover Heights. So Anthony Coletti to be joined as joint respondent in this proceeding for the purpose of the following orders to do with the Dover Heights property. So he's got to have it articulated served on receivers by the 17th of March. The receivers are to file and serve a response by the 31st of March 2022. The proceeding will be listed for case management on the 3rd of May. So in the absence that if he doesn't do his stuff, then they will grant leave to file and serve an application seeking vacant possession on the Denver Heights property, and any relief sought. What time do you call this on a Saturday morning? It's not even 8 a.m. It's 9:19. So they've got to file their submissions by the 9th of March. So the plaintiff is excused from further appearance in the proceeding unless he wishes to do so. So anyway, so that is the proceedings for Laura. They found a foot, just a foot. That's all we've got. No, Peter's in the Northern Territory. So let's look at the documents that were filed. Yeah. So I'm going to have to just go back to the online file. Yeah, so they've only got the orders here. They haven't redacted all the other information yet, so it's not available yet. But we've just read the orders. So essentially, there are some time frames now for the court. Remember, this is a public interest case. Public interest case. Oh no, Windows, it's going on and on and on. But I sort of find it funny that the husband's saying that he can't take any days off because he's got to work, etc., etc., etc. And he's got to support her child, etc., etc., etc. I mean, come on, Mr. Coletti. That's what the rest of us do every day of our lives. But it'd be interesting. So he didn't do what he was supposed to do as far as the cars. He didn't prove that he had a stake of the claim of the cars. So they got sold. So yeah, the houses are the last lot of the big property to be sold. So as I said, in my opinion, I believe the parents should be able. Well, I read somewhere totally clueless that the dad was living with them as well. I don't know. I don't know where the dad is. But he says to the court he's a young child, but the child's a teenager. Like a young child to me is like toddler, under 10, as soon as you hit. Yeah, this is I've just got out of bed look. So I'm just really, yeah. So so as I said, he's a high schooler. So as I said, Mr. Coletti objected to this was his car that sold for $295,000 on Monday night. But as I said, I think, in my opinion, that the parents have more of a case, because they actually gave her $1.1 million towards the property. But she spent it. She probably took her husband on a luxury holiday. It says she spent it on designer clothes, cars, and jewelry. She may have bought his car with her money. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not very sympathetic to the husband. I'm more sympathetic to the parents. But it was purchased for $6.2 million in 2014, and I think that he's a hairdresser, hasn't been working. I remember, so anything expensive he owns while with her, he shouldn't be. Well, that's what I'm saying, totally clueless. And he said he had $1.95 in his bank account when she disappeared. And it's funny. So, and he's saying that he can't. What do you say? I need all the money I can get, adding that he couldn't afford to take any days off work to let him. I'm trying to support a young child. So he's having to go back to work. I feel very sorry for him. And he doesn't want them going into the house and taking stuff. But it would seem that the stuff that was purchased was not purchased. Isn't it like proceeds of crime? It's like a proceeds of crime, I think, isn't it? Because he's angry. Apparently, he's angry at the government for chasing her away. Oh dear. It's a nice house. Oh, look, let's have a look at the house. Oh, yeah. So this is the Daily Mail in the UK. Thank you, UK. They've got view gallery. So it could be sold to repay the victims. So this was the sports car that Caddicks had bought him. So he's lost that. So I'm just having a look. What else in here? Yeah, about $30 million. $30 million. I have been trying to recover some of the life savings of her 72 clients poured into the scam, which funded her lifestyle. There's investors were scammed out of about $30 million. So, and it says Daily Mail is not suggesting Mr. Coletti in any way is responsible for Caddicks' fraudulent conduct or had any knowledge of it. Now, the company that she had has been ordered to be wound up, and anything that's left to be divided. All right, so that's Melissa Caddicks. That was Oh, that's the picture. Oh, look, we got all these pictures here. So let's go on a tour. Shall we go on a house tour? Let's go on a house tour. Well, this was pictures of the him at court. Where are we? All right, view gallery. Let's go. Let's go on the house tour. Right, here we go. You ready? Don't know why we've got that. Oh, no, it's not. I thought we were going on a house tour. I'm very disappointed. Oh. Disappointed. I thought I was getting a house tour. No, disappointed. I was hoping to get a house tour. Maybe when it goes for sale, we might be able to. So anyway. She looks very calm there, doesn't she? Anyway. Did you have your car? I've had 2 this morning. I've had 2 this morning, and if I get really stuck, I got this. So very interesting. So here I'm going to put it out to the YouTube jury. Do you think Mr. Coletti should be able to keep his house? First of all, so that's the first question. Should he be able to keep his house? Let's put that question. Nope. Nope. No, sell it. All right, so here's the other question for you. Do you think the parents should be able to keep their house? Apparently, Mr. Coletti was also a DJ and a music director, a music producer, and a hairdresser. So, what do you think? Undecided? You're undecided. As I said, the fact that they sold their house, I think the fact that they sold their house. So, in one of the court documents, there's an affidavit where they've stated that they actually sold their house and gave her the proceeds of the house for this house for their retirement, and that they had a lifelong tenancy in the house. That was the agreement that they had. And what about the brother? Should he be able to claim a stake? Apparently, he's made mortgage payments. He's given her mortgage payments. Surely that would have rung alarm bells. Why was she needing payments for the mortgage? Now, also the police have we did cover this briefly, but the police have put they've applied for an AVO against the husband as well. So, because he's trying to interfere with the investigation, is the allegation. So they saw earlier this month saw an AVO against against Coletti to protect ASIC investigators from doing their job. An aggravated violence. Why not? Is it a? It's like a restraining order. So it says he represented himself in court when the matter was first mentioned in Sydney's Dowling Centre on Wednesday. Do you agree to the AVO against you? Magistrate Susan Horan asked. I don't, Your Honour. Both he and police must file evidence by next month before the matter returns to court on March 30. He declined to answer questions from waiting media. That's him. So she has been, remember, she's been disclosed. She's been declared dead. So So she tricked investors into giving them. She was meticulous and systematic in the way she lured investors into handing over money, sometimes their life savings. Mr. Coletti has persistently maintained his wife did not defraud investors, so he's maintaining she didn't do it. He released a spoken word dance album titled Raid on Spotify under the name Pause Off that is critical of ASIC investigators. One track titled Improper, Cruel and Inhuman, while another is called Melissa is Missing. Well, that's really going to help, isn't it? Apparently she has life insurance. So there's, she's taken out life insurance as well. Yeah, so an AVO is an apprehended violence order. It's it's usually about it's usually made against a person who fears safety. What they're stating is that the investigator has been threatened by the police are alleging that he's got someone to threaten her. So New South Wales police, yeah. So that's an AVO, aggravated violence order. An apprehended violence order. It's to protect you from further violence, intimidation, or harassment. So they're just trying to keep him away from the police are saying they're trying to protect the investigator, so the investigator can do their job. Okay. I know a lot of people are here for the next matter. The next matter on the agenda. Our good friend, the journalist. Now, I may be wrong. And I'm quite happy to admit that I'm wrong. But this is what she writes. NATO is preparing to defend Ukraine against Russia by launching the NATO response force for the first time ever since the treaty was signed. Now, am I wrong? But Ukraine isn't part of NATO. Russia bears full responsibility for this conflict. So I'm not sure why NATO would get involved. NATO can make a response. NATO can make a response, but Ukraine isn't a NATO, and we'll talk about that in a minute. That's my understanding. Russia bears full responsibility for this conflict. It has rejected the pain of diplomacy and dialogue repeatedly offered to it by NATO and allies. It has fundamentally violated international law, including the UN Charter. Russia's actions are a flagrant rejection of the principles enshrined in the NATO-Russia Founding Act. It is Russia that has walked away from its commitments. under the Act. President Putin's decision to attack Ukraine is a terrible strategic mistake for which Russia will pay a severe price, both economically and politically, for years to come. Massive unprecedented sanctions have already been imposed on Russia. NATO will continue to coordinate closely with stakeholders and other international agencies, organizations, including the EU. We will continue to provide political and practical support to Ukraine as it continues to defend itself and call on others to do the same. We reaffirm our unwavering support for the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its international recognized borders, including territorial waters. We've deployed defense aid We have deployed defensive land and air forces in the eastern part of the alliance and maritime assets across the NATO seas. We have activated NATO's defense plans to prepare ourselves to respond to a range of contingencies and secure alliance territory, including drone air response forces. We are now making significant additional defensive deployments forces to the eastern parts of the alliance. We make deployment necessarily to ensure strong and credible deterrence and defense across our alliance now and in the future. Our measures are and remain preventative. So she says this means 8,500 US troops could be ordered to Europe. The activation was unanimous. Now, from what I understand, now they've only talked about the alliance. So let's look at the alliance. So from my interpretation, it doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily take on Russia. They're putting their troops into the alliances. They're going to protect their alliance. So let's have a look. I'm trying to just make this a little bit bigger if I can. It is maximize so that you can see that. So the countries in blue are the NATO countries. So they're saying that they're they're ordering their forces on the borders of the alliance. So, of course, if Russia's attacking Ukraine, so what is to say that Russia's not going to go further afield? So from my understanding, from what I could work out from what NATO has said, that they're actually putting forces along the borders of their alliances to protect their borders. They're not necessarily going to protect, they're going to support the Ukraine, but they've got to protect their alliances first. So let's have a look. So Ukraine is not a member of NATO, though the International Security Alliance has been a key player in its ongoing conflict with Russia. Since the United States helped form NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in 1949 to counter Soviet aggression in Europe, the alliance has grown to 30 member countries, including 3 former Soviet republics, the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. I mean, what's to say that those countries aren't next? Because they were former Soviet states. In 2008, NATO appeared to open its door to membership to 2 or more former Soviet republics when its heads of governments declared Georgia and Ukraine would become members. See the fox of NATO. Neither have formally received the pathway to eventual membership, with corruption concerns and lack of consensus among members seen in part as holding back Ukraine's invitation. Russian President Vladimir Putin has demanded that Ukraine never join the alliance, as he seeks to limit NATO's presence in Eastern Europe. So Putin's military operations has prompted NATO allies worried about further escalation to issue sanctions meant to impact Russia's economy, bolster troops along the alliance's eastern flank, and repeatedly warn that an attack on one of the NATO, whoopsies, I'm great at doing that, aren't I? Is an attack on all. So NATO are not necessarily supporting the Ukraine. They are actually supporting their alliances. They are bolstering their borders. So this is what I'm saying about misinformation, because Ukraine is not part of NATO. I'll just repeat that. Has prompted NATO allies worried about further escalation to issue sanctions meant to impact the Russian economy, bolster troops along the alliance's eastern flank, and repeatedly warn that an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all. Now, just also note that the United States and Canada are also part of NATO. Iceland is also part of NATO. UK is part of NATO. So there's 30 countries, okay? And as Australia has an alliance with, so it's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it was designed in 1949 to counter Soviet aggression in Europe. That's what NATO is, in the whispers. It was formed during the Cold War. So because Australia is an ally to the UK, because Australia is an ally to the US and the UK, let's face it, our head of state is from the UK. We could get dragged in as well. But anyway, so NATO has gone to secure their alliances. So I am assuming, this is my assumption, this is my speculation, that they're going to be putting their troops along the borders here, ready to protect the alliances. So it's only the alliances. So when Katie Joy is talking about the fact that NATO is sending troops to the Ukraine, they're not. They're sending them along the alliance's eastern flank. So in the wake of Russia's attack on Ukraine, President Joe Biden announced that NATO will convene a summit on Friday to affirm our solidarity and to map out the next steps we'll take to strengthen all aspects of the NATO alliance. So Katie Joy quoted NATO, and it says, "We've activated NATO's defense plan to respond to a range of contingencies and secure alliance territories." Remember, Ukraine is not part of the alliance. They've come out and spoken against the alliance. But this statement here is NATO is preparing to defend Ukraine against Russia is not entirely true. They're actually preparing to defend themselves. So it says, "We've activated NATO's defense plans to prepare ourselves to respond to a range of contingencies and secure alliance territories, including by drawing our response forces." They are at the moment securing the borders. Okay. So Biden has repeatedly said the US won't be sending troops to engage with Russia in Ukraine, though he has recently authorized deployment of ground and air forces to Europe to support NATO's eastern flank allies, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania. Oh, look, they just happen to be the border. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania. Yeah, this part here. So at the moment, the NATO are protecting these borders. Following Thursday's attack on Ukraine, Biden says, Biden has said he's also authorized additional forces to deploy to Germany as part of NATO's response. According to senior Defense Department officials, 7,000 members will be deployed to Germany in the coming days. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East. See, it's not about defending the Ukraine. It's about protecting the allies. As I made crystal clear, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power. And I'm a little bit, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit saddened that Ukraine have to defend themselves against Russia. However, you can see why these countries are preparing for the worst. I'm saying when we're talking about Russia, we're talking about Putin. We're not talking about the people of Russia. The people of Russia are lovely people. And I'm feeling for them at the moment because there are people in Russia that are being penalized for Putin's behavior. And the thing is, whenever there are sanctions, it's not that Putin's not going to care. Who are the people that are going to suffer? Who are the people that are going to suffer? the people who are the most vulnerable and the most innocent. And that's what annoys me about all of this. So during a video address before he announced the military operation in Ukraine, Putin linked the current crisis directly to Russia's NATO demands, which include a guarantee that NATO stop expanding to the east and pull back its infrastructure from Eastern Europe countries that joined after the Cold War. He accused the US and NATO of ignoring Russia's demands and blamed the West for the current crisis in Ukraine. Which is interesting. So Putin basically said the West is taking over this. We're going to grab Ukraine because Ukraine aren't associated. Yeah, I understand. It's a complex issue. Yeah, you're right, totally. And it is sad. So this is the thing, because Putin's upset with the West, he's going after Ukraine because he knows NATO is not going to defend them. The potential impact of the Ukraine conflict on the US interests is considered significant by the Council on Foreign Relations, which see in part that the conflict risks further deterioration of US-Russia. He's trying to ruin European vision, possibly as well, and greater escalation if Russia expands its presence in Ukraine or into NATO countries. And that's the concern, that he won't stop at Ukraine. That's why, as I said, the NATO response has got nothing to do with supporting Ukraine. It's about protecting their own interests, which you do. You support, you protect your borders, correct? I'm not having a go. I mean, this is just a very delicate situation and my heart is breaking, but I just don't like misinformation. Ukraine are currently having to battle on their own. Well, I would too, totally clueless. I would too. I would support them. I would support them going into the supporting Ukraine as well. Well, Bo, that's another thing. I think we shouldn't get fixated only on Ukraine, Doug Leak told a former US ambassador to NATO and ABC News contributor told ABC News. Putin's ambitions beyond that are essentially to rewind the clock 30 years and reverse the progress made in the Western Europe, certainly Central and Eastern Europe, and if possible, break the ties between the US and the European alliance. Were the conflict to go beyond Ukraine and impact NATO members, that could lead to organisations to invoke its mutual self-defence clause, what's known as Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, which states an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or America shall be considered attack against them all. If one ally is attacked, the others will respond. And that's what they've already said. So the last time, the first and only time NATO evoked Article 5 was in response to terrorist attacks of September 11 in support of the US. On Thursday, Biden said the US and NATO allies will meet our Article 5 commitments if necessary in response to Russian aggression, though they are seeking to de-escalate the conflict through increased sanctions. So is it possible that Putin goes beyond Ukraine? Sure, it's a possibility, but there's something very powerful standing in the way. That's something we call Article 5 of NATO. So the other grey area around the NATO's Article 5 is response to Russian cyber attacks and the impact beyond Ukraine. So Russia may actually just do cyber attacks against the allies, is their concern as well. So, it's very sad. I just find the whole thing sad. And I'm not trying to, this is not about politicizing. I don't want this, I just wish, there was another way. So I'm just going to put the map up again. So essentially, as we said, the US have sending troops to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and where else? Poland. Essentially along this border here to protect the NATO countries. And that's what I've said. Ukraine is essentially on its own at the moment, and I know parts of it's pro-Russia, I know parts of it's not, but again, for both Russia and the Ukraine, it's the innocent and the most vulnerable that are going to get hurt. And it's really quite sad. The whole thing is sad, and I don't want to make, but I just want, I would just like, people to be truthful in their reporting of it. "50,000 Ukrainians refugees have fled. That is horrifying. Did anyone see the pictures of the roads of the Ukraine? See, these are the innocent people. These are the people that are hurting. It's these people. They're saying that they're going to need $1 billion for humanitarian efforts. These are the people that are hurting, and there will be the same people. There'll be people in Russia that said, I read, yes, borders are open to take them in, I heard. Yeah, so Ukrainian wait for passport control area after exiting a train from Odessa main station in Poland. Issued an order. The Ukrainian government issued an order to stop 18 to 60-year-old men from allegedly for military conscription from crossing borders. So only women and children and men under the age of 18 and over the age of 60. All right, I'll just have a look at my DMs. Just hold on for a minute. So I'm pretty, so Ukraine are doing conscription at the moment because but I just get really annoyed when everything is politicized. Oh. Thank you. All right. So let's have a look. This is Australia takes extraordinary step to consider imposing sanctions on Russian President Vladimir Putin. So thank you, Bella. Foreign Minister Maurice Payne said Australia is taking steps to impose sanctions on Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Oh, look, talking about United States, United Kingdom, the European Union, and Canada made the announcement to punish Putin overnight, and Australia is looking to follow suit. It's an extraordinary step to sanction leaders, but this is an exceptional situation, Senator Payne told reporters on Saturday morning. There is a strong agreement and determination to ensure Russia faces a high cost for what is a completely unprovoked and unjustified attack on its neighbours. Australia has announced a further round of sanctions, sanctioning 8 Russian oligarchs and 339 members of the Russian parliament who Ms. Payne said are political facilitators in the invasion. Senator Payne said key figures in the Belarusian government have also been targeted who are abetting the invasion. The invasion is a wholesome breach of international law. It is a breach of the UN Charter and the most flagrant violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity that Europe has seen in decades. So my question is, how do they sanction Putin without it affecting the innocent Russians? Just saw something else. Ooh. Okay. So this is photos from Ukraine as Russia's deadly invasion met with some resistance. So Ukraine troops took position on Kiev on Friday. People have rushed to shelters when sirens have sounded in the capital. Look at that. I mean, doesn't this break your heart? Doesn't it look? Many have used the subway system as a makeshift bomb shelter. Others made their way into basements of buildings. People are trying to leave. Look at that. Yeah, they've cancelled the World Cup. I think I think that they are on other roads. Ukrainian soldiers prevent Russian military from entering the city. A destroyed Russian military multiple rocket launcher on the outskirts. Look at that. Locals were seen forming makeshift checkpoints. Russian attacks have damaged many buildings. Champions League has gone to Paris, yes. The members of the Ukraine Territorial Defence Force receive weapons. Here is a hospital ward. And the residential buildings. Yeah, see, Ukraine has been left to fall. Is testing the US and NATO, and a shocking reminder that tough talk doesn't work. So, yeah, Ukraine is being left to defend themselves, but NATO is ready to protect their alliances. So, no, Mr. Potato Head. So apparently the only person that he listens to, Putin listens to, is the China guy. So I'm gonna okay, so Forbes has listed 13 ways that we can help Ukraine right. This is really important, and we're going to end the stream after this. But what we can do to help Ukraine. So United Help for Ukraine is a non-profit volunteer organisation, distributes medical support. I haven't vetted these. This has just been put together by Forbes magazine. But so United Help Ukraine. So they distribute medical supplies, food donations to Ukrainian refugees and people on the ground in Ukraine, as well as offer support to Ukrainian families who have lost soldiers to war. Donations to their current fundraisers will help provide emergency medical aid and humanitarian relief. There's the USA for UNCHCR, is accepting donations via a restricted fund to provide emergency aid to children, women, and men displaced. There's the Red Cross, or the Ukrainian branch of the Red Cross, is accepting donations, Voices for Children, to provide psychological and psychosocial support to Ukrainian children affected by conflict. I'm actually going to just put this up here. So I haven't vetted it, but please, if you feel like that you need to help, find somebody, Nova Ukraine is an American non-profit that works with activists and other organizations in Ukraine. The Kiev Independent is Ukraine's English language media outlet. So it's reporting on the invasion on the ground. And so they've got a GoFundMe or Patreon because I think it's really important to get the stuff that's reported on the ground. Come Back Alive is a local organization that the Kiev Independent has suggested donating to. It supports the Ukrainian military by offering supplies, protection, training, and psychological support to soldiers. There's Army SOS, so it supplies food and other supports. UNICEF. There's CARE. International Medical Corps is another one. It's an LA based. In addition to offering financial support, sharing accurate fact-based information about the Russian invasion of Ukraine with your friends, family, and social media followers can help raise awareness about the situation. You can choose to boycott Russian goods and services and move that echoes the new sanctions announced by the president. So
So if you want to help, there's just some ways to help. As I say, I just googled, I just put in help Ukraine now, but there's Ukraine Emergency Fund appeal by World Vision. There's Save the Children, support women in Ukraine, Ukraine crisis recovery. There's lots of stuff that how you can help. 9 ways to help Ukraine. Ukraine emergency appeal. Elderly in Ukraine help. Urgent help in Ukraine needed. So there's lots of ways that you can donate, and I don't know which one. Yeah. Not that I care about the innocent, but no one cared about sanction about by this time. Yeah, that's a good point, Tony, because I have to say I always care about innocence. Which is often unpopular opinion because, as I said, there's also innocent people in Russia as well. But yeah, to state that NATO is actually going in to defend Ukraine is incorrect, Katie Joy. The NATO are getting ready to defend their alliance countries. So, yes, you can stand with Ukraine, which I do. But I think it's also important that we have factual information, not get everybody's hopes up that, NATO is going to come in and save Ukraine, because Ukraine's sort of on its own. However, we can give financial support to help the people on the ground if you feel that you can. Just wanted to show something else because I don't know whether you realize this. Let me just get this done. The Salvation Army as an organization is in both Russia and Ukraine, which is really, really interesting. And so are supporting their Russian people and the Ukrainian people. This is probably why I'm sort of straight down the middle, I guess. The Salvation Army made a statement, and I thought I'd give you this one. I thought I'd read you this because I thought, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know why the sanctions aren't going to help him. So this is from the leader of the Salvation Army, because, as I said, we've got people in both countries. So he says, General Brian Peddle, the spiritual leader of the Salvation Army, is calling on the International Salvation Army family to pray for a diplomatic resolution to the conflict unfolding between Russia and Ukraine. He said, our service to the Kingdom of God transcends national identity and crosses international borders without prejudice or discrimination. We have officers serving in communities in Russia and Ukraine today, and I ask that you pray for them and for those in mourning as the crisis unfolds. We pray for a diplomatic resolution to this conflict and peace to return swiftly to avoid further costs of life. General Peddle acknowledged the strain placed on all Salvation Army officers in each country and thanked them for their service. He said, we are dismayed by the loss of life and stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Christ as they continue to serve their communities. I mean, that is straight down the middle because, again, when you've got people in both countries, you can't say one to the other. But there are stories coming out of Russia of turmoil as well. This is from the Salvation Army in Ukraine. So this says, I had the translation before. Didn't work. So the Salvation Army in Ukraine. Dear friends from Ukraine, trouble forced you to leave your homes. The Salvation Army of the Moldova Division provides free assistance to refugees from Ukraine, temporary sleepover, necessary things, hot water, drinks, Wi-Fi, hotline phone, and then Moldova. So that's there. Let's pray for peace in Ukraine. So this is a children's home. So yeah, they it just, for me, it really makes it the Ukraine, actually, Salvation Army in Ukraine is actually really growing fast. They're doing a lot of really good work in there as well. But as I said, it's the Salvation Army is sort of, no, the governments don't care. You're correct. You are correct. So anyway, I wanted just to leave you with that. And as I said, if you feel that you need to help, just research some places where the money goes directly to the people of Ukraine. And, you know, apparently Russia is restricting, it's interesting, here's another update. Russia is restricting its use of Facebook, according to its parent Meta. So ordinary Russians are using apps to express themselves and organize for action. We want them to continue to make their voices heard. So yesterday, Russian authorities ordered us to stop the independent fact-checking and labeling of content posted on Facebook by 4 Russian state-owned media organizations. We refused. As a result, they are restricting the use of our services. So Poland and Czech Republic are banning Russian carriers from their airspace. UK suspended the foreign carrier permit. And the Ukrainian president posted a selfie-style video showing himself standing outside the president's office in Kiev, along with his defense minister, prime minister, and parliamentary leader. We are all here, our military are here as our people and whole society. We're all here defending our independence and country, and we'll go on doing that. So there you go. What else? There's just been a new update, so let's have a look. Ukraine says it's in initial stage of talks with Russia. Ukraine is in the initial stages of contact for possible negotiations with Russia to end the fighting. The two governments are discussing details such as time and place of the talks. The meeting will take place between advisors and aides, not between the two leaders. The Kremlin said earlier Friday it was ready to send a delegation for talks to Belarus capital Minsk, and was ready to discuss neutral status for Ukraine. Russia's foreign ministry later claimed the Zelensky administration had said to postpone any more discussions of talks until Saturday. Discussions come as Zelensky warned Ukrainians in a televised address that Russia will not attempt to storm Kiev tonight. So it looks like that they've started talks. So yeah. So that is the latest. That looks like there's talks starting. Shall we just, those of you that pray, maybe we pray that they can come to some resolution and stop it. Well, as I said, he posed a picture of himself there. He was preparing to stay. So, hey, he's already. I like that guy better. I mean, he's there. Our guy, Mr. ScoMo, he goes to Hawaii when things happen. Or he goes on holidays. So, yeah. By the way, did you know that NATO has global partners that include Afghanistan, Australia, Colombia, Iraq, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Mongolia, New Zealand, and Pakistan. Did you know that? Which I find to be quite interesting. So, yeah, it's saying that NATO rules out intervention in Ukraine. So what Boris Johnson would have run to the airport. Well, ScoMo would have been next to him. Yes, so unlike what Katie Joy reported, NATO is not going to run to the Ukraine's aid. They are bolstering their allies. Now, the allied country may help the Ukraine on itself, the allied part of, but NATO, as NATO stands, it's not. Anyway, based on that, I've been on for an hour. It's 10:14. My Saturday's going away. It's overcast. So, yeah. And I will catch you all later. And yeah, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. And I will see you again soon. Bye for now.